Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find us on all the places, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, at Hawk Blogger. And as you know, we are trying to get to 25,000 subscribers on YouTube, 10,000 followers on Instagram. We do either one of those, giving away tickets to the week 1 game against the 49ers. So let's get that done. And part of the push is this guy next to me, and boy, can he push. Jared Ivey, the undrafted but undeterred free agent from Ole Miss. How are you doing, man? Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, doing good. Just, excited to chop it up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, had you been to the Northwest before this?
No, this is the farthest north or west I've ever been.
Yeah, what are your early impressions?
It's great. I mean, the summers here are beautiful. I hear all the horror stories about the fall, but right now I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, well, and you grew up in the Atlanta area, is that right?
Yep.
So, I mean, we got a game in Atlanta, we're going to go into later. You might have a chance to go home. You hoping, I know it's one step at a time, but you thought about that at all?
Yeah, trying to keep one foot in front of the other and think about today and tomorrow. But, I just know I'm not buying anybody any tickets. I know that
much. I hear you on that. So, you've been at it now in training camp, and, I don't want to, put any anxious things on your shoulders, but you're 1 week from the day where they'll make the decision on who's on the final roster. You've had a really strong preseason. How are you feeling about the impression that you've made on the team?
At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how much, I feel. I'm just trying to go out there and get better every day and leave those decisions to the decision makers and try to just, put out my best product every day.
What is it that they wanted to see from you? They communicate like, hey, this is what we're looking for, or this is something we want to see that you can do on the field. Anything specific that they've given you as like, hey, this is what we want to see from your game?
I think the biggest thing was just showing that I could learn and get better every day. And I'm just trying to get quicker and more physical and win in the pass game, win in the run game, and just my all-around game.
Well, there's this thing called PFF, and there's a lot of controversy about whether it means anything. But I'll tell you, because I like when it says good things. You're the second highest graded defender on the Seahawks so far this preseason. You are the 6th highest, actually the 5th highest graded run defender across all edge rushers, all edge players in the NFL during the preseason. Does that track for you?
I don't buy into the numbers and all of that. I'm just trying to go out there and do the same things that we do at practice and coaches harping on. So, I don't know. PFF, what can
they
you do?
They don't make the decisions about what happens yet.
There's a couple guys that make the decision on if I'm going to be here in the fall or not. And those guys' opinions mean a lot more to me than PFF.
That makes sense. And so, Justin Hines is a defensive line coach. I assume you spend some time with him. Of the coaches here, who are the guys you spend the most time with, and what are some things maybe that you picked up in talking to them?
Yeah, obviously Coach Hines, outside linebacker Coach Partridge, and then probably the defensive coordinator AD. Just trying to pick up every little tidbit. Coach Hines, he does a lot of motivational stuff and kind of a lot of mind work of like, what is our intent for today and what are we focusing on? And then, CP, he was my defensive coordinator in college. So it's cool to just mess around with him and cool to be coached by him again. And then AD, just dropping wisdom of pass rush and our plan and how we want to rush, as a unit. So just kind of learning the game from those guys. And then, of course, the older players too, and learning from the vets.
I didn't know that you and Partridge had crossed paths. So where was that? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, he was the DC at Ole Miss in 2022. So yeah, I played my first year at Ole Miss there with him, and he was a great dude, and loved playing for him there, and the opportunity made itself coming out of the draft this year, and just super excited to link back up with him. So
if my research is right, football wasn't your first sport love. It was basketball. Is that right?
Yeah, I love to hoop.
So what position were you in basketball? What was your game like? Talk us through it.
Yeah, just kind of undersized big. I played the 4 and the 5.
Okay.
And just I tried to be a defensive force down there and put my 2 cents in on offense.
We talking about block shots? We talking about just muscling people out of the post?
A little bit of both. I set the record most charges taken.
Oh.
You know what I mean? I set the record most blocks in a game. So just trying to clean everything up for the little guys up there.
Man, I think block shots are one of the most fun parts of basketball. Even as a short guy like me, when you can get up there and knock it out, like there's nothing better. So it changed for you though. Like it sounds like coaches kind of said eventually, like, hey, you're great at basketball, but we see a bigger future for you in football. Tell us about what that moment was like for you growing up.
I think, when I started getting recruited heavily in probably my sophomore year and the offers started to count up, I kind of knew like, hey, it's probably going to end up being football, but that never deterred me from playing basketball. I felt like it was keeping me in shape and keeping my fast twitch alive. And going into my senior year, a lot of schools wanted me to come out early, but growing up, me and the guys always talked about that last senior year and going and trying to do something special. So I stayed in high school and we ended up winning the region championship. So always place in my heart for basketball.
Have you evaluated any of the hoops guys here in the locker room? Any conversation about how that would?
It's always going to be conversation.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm always going to come out on top. So, I'm not really stunned too much what everybody else has to say about their game, but unfortunately staying off the court these days.
Yeah. I get it. It's too bad. It's a great game, but it does bring some risk with it. So, talk to us about, growing up, came out of Atlanta and I know, you got your mom and you had some adversity early on in your life with your dad. Talk to us about what it was like in that household and what kind of shaped who you are.
Yeah, just, grew up in Swanee, Georgia. Dad kind of moved the family there, before I was born. And then ended up passing away whenever I was in elementary school. I was 6, my older brother was 10. So, my mom had to work really hard to keep us there. She knew the opportunities that we'd have, living there versus moving somewhere else. And she worked her butt off to keep us there and provide. And, I feel like me and my brother reaped the benefits of it.
Well, did your brother have to kind of take on a little bit of responsibility, or how did that work between the two of you?
Yeah, I think, it was kind of just, we gotta do our part and do our chores and keep the house as stress free as possible. Mom's out there working hard and we got to do as much to take the load off her as we can.
So if somebody has not had a chance to really see you play, doesn't know Jared Ivey that well, how would you describe your game?
I think I just play really instinctual and fluid. Like, I like to, I like to make people miss and I love winning one-on-one matchups. But, I think I just am a well-rounded all around, Swiss Army knife kind of player.
You've really displayed a lot of power in your game and a lot of ability to displace people, and you're really long. You're able to just keep blockers off of you. Are there some of the vets here? I mean, you got some pretty amazing vets, whether it's DeMarcus or Leonard or any of the others. Anyone that you kind of picked their brains and learned a thing or two from?
Yeah, absolutely. Both of those guys. I learned a lot from Leo and D-Law already. Murph and even though he's a second-year player, but he knows a lot about the game. Jay Reed, one of the smartest guys I've played with. So just trying to soak everything up in the meetings and write everything down and try to translate that to the field.
All right. Well, you are about to head to Green Bay. And have you ever been to Lambeau?
I actually did a 30 visit there, yeah.
Okay. All right. So have you ever done a joint practice before?
I have not, no.
So they're known to get a little chippy. And I know Coach McDonald, will make it clear he doesn't want anyone getting into it, but it almost always happens anyway. When you look at going against other guys, other teams, do you look forward to that? Or are you kind of like, I'd prefer to go against my own teammates?
Yeah, I'm just kind of going into it with the, faceless opponent kind of mindset. It doesn't really matter who's lined up. It could be our team. It could be another team. Just kind of staying focused on me and my game and us and our game and kind of going out there and trying to accomplish business.
All right, last question for you, Jared. So other side of the ball, you have been going against a lot of the same guys throughout the last, couple months at this point. Who's kind of gotten your attention on the Seahawks offensive line? Tough one to go against.
Gray, I'll shout out another rookie. He's a hell of a player, and he's got a really strong outside punch and really athletic for an offensive lineman, and he's got good feet, good hands, kind of a complete guard.
All right, I forgot one more thing. So yesterday you guys got the day off. I think it was probably a little bit of surprise from the coach. How's your golf game?
Not as good as I'd like it to be, but I'm getting there. I've been playing for a couple of years now, and yeah, it's hard. We don't get a lot of time, and really can only play in the off season. So I use it as more of a fun thing, man. Just trying to get out there and hit a couple good shots.
Did anyone show off? Anyone bring their A game yesterday?
Well, Chenna brought his club, so that
he's one of those guys, huh?
That was pretty cool. He let me take a couple swings with the QI, so that was pretty nice.
All right, man. Jared, I'm gonna let you get back to it. I really appreciate it. You want to send anything to your mom, who's probably gonna be checking this out?
I just want to say I love you, and I wouldn't be here without you. So thank you.
All right, man. Thank you so much. You can drop those headsets out, and I will see you on the practice field in a little bit.
Thank you.
That's Jared Ivey, your undrafted rookie defensive end, who has been absolutely making an impression through camp and through the first two preseason games. We're going to see what happens as they go into this final game of the preseason. And I think this guy, I've got him on my roster. I think even with Uchenna Nwosu coming off of the disabled list, thanks, Maz. I think this guy makes the roster. I think that his combination of power and skill is going to be too hard to sneak on to the practice squad. And we'll see what happens in the joint practice. We'll see what happens in this final preseason game. But that's where I'm at with it. And the other piece here to kind of think about, I mean, this guy has been a pretty heavily recruited player, and generally guys like that are well known throughout the NFL. It's not like somebody who's just a late round pick, or like a minor recruit that then bursts on the scene. Gray Zabel was like a no-star recruit for what it's worth. He's really been a late riser. Jared Ivey was not, and he's a guy that already went into the transfer portal, went from Georgia Tech to Ole Miss, and I didn't know about the Partridge connection. That's an interesting one. I'll have to poke on that a little bit further, but I would bet that is part of the reason that he ended up in here in Seattle, both from the side of Partridge probably telling the Seahawks this is a guy that we should bring in, and Jared Ivey probably saying, hey, this is a guy that I want to reunite with because I've had experience with him and he knows my game. So that's an interesting connection. The fact that he used to be a basketball player and a pretty well-regarded basketball player late in high school, I think also shows some of the athleticism and some of the way he moves out there, even for a guy that's 275 pounds. So, yeah, I wasn't sure. I tend to be someone who focuses on the quicker twitch athletes and maybe some of the guys that have really clear speed to power, like Jared Verse is a guy that I was super high on last year. But Ivey is not the quickest twitch guy, but he is very long and powerful. And I think that like a good comp for him, at least the way I see him playing so far, is Roy Robertson Harris, who the Seahawks traded for last year, who was similarly large, similarly powerful, similarly long, and was a very, valuable player. And what this could, there's a chance, I'm not sure it will, but there's a chance that Jared Ivey could be someone that they look at in place of Mike Morris. And, I hadn't really thought about that until honestly, I was just talking through it there. But when the Seahawks made the trade for Roy Robertson Harris last year, it was because Mike Morris had not really shown that he was ready, capable of holding down the point of attack inside. He's a very I think he has a lot of different skill sets, and he can play all along the line. And he's great in terms of lateral agility and being able to chase down plays and drop into coverage. There's a lot of things that Mike Morris does well. And I think he's had a good camp and a good preseason as well. But I'm not sure the power is there. And if that is why they ended up going and getting Roy Robertson Harris last year. Now they didn't re-sign him. He's with the Giants now. But do they look at Jared Ivey in the same way and say, maybe this is a guy that we keep around and can be part of our edge deployment? I've been thinking about him as a DeMarcus Lawrence backup. And I think they have some similar, even though DeMarcus Lawrence is a little lighter weight, like maybe 10 pounds lighter, I think their games are pretty similar. And so who knows? This is something that could have some impact. Maybe there's some duplicative aspects of Morris and Ivey, although they do run in different groups. So the coaching staff sees them a little bit differently, at least based on their utilization. So we'll kind of keep an eye on that. But I think Jared Ivey's could be one of the next Seahawks undrafted finds, diamonds in the rough, and a guy that, should have been drafted, most likely based off of what I've seen so far. And as I said, the second highest graded defender on the Seahawks through 2 preseason games, the highest graded run defender on the Seahawks, and the 5th highest graded run defender in the NFL among edge rushers through 2 preseason games. So good stuff there. A couple things that I want to cover with you guys before I head out to practice and watch that. Sorry, I keep messing with my mic, just trying to get it right. So first, I see that there is a super chat. Let me get to that and put that out here. And let me do one other thing here. We'll switch this up, make it a little bit smaller since there's only one of me. So the super chat is from Hippopotamus. Says, how crucial is the gap between a second string and third string center? Is it more than an additional roster per spot, considering the third is a freebie? How crucial is the gap between a third and second and third string center? I'm not sure I really understand the focus of the question, because I think they're only going to keep 2 centers. They're going to keep Jalen Sundell, and they'll keep Oluwatimi. Federico Merenges is an international prospect, so he'll get an exemption and be, I think, part of the practice squad, so they'll be able to keep an extra player, but I don't think he'll be on the 53, and I don't think they will keep anyone else as a third string center. Mason Richmond is a guy who's been taking snaps there, and I, in my latest roster projection, did have Mason Richmond making the roster, so maybe he would be considered a third string center. Christian Haynes initially had been taking some snaps there, but has not since he had some snap problems, and so I'm not sure that he would be considered a center in that regard. And in my latest roster projection, I don't have him making it, although that is a very bold claim. I think it is pretty rare for teams to move on from their 3rd round picks the next year. So, and I don't know that Christian Haynes is some unplayable guy that they just have to get rid of, but I just wonder, you see teams like the Cincinnati Bengals taking visits from Dalton Risner, the old and kind of washed up guard. You see other teams desperate for offensive linemen. Is there a chance that the Seahawks find somebody who's excited enough about Christian Haynes that they're willing to surrender something that the Seahawks value, whether it's a draft pick or whether it's another player at a position that the Seahawks are more interested in than they are in Christian Haynes? So we'll see about that, but hopefully I did as good as I can answering your question, Hippopotamus. So just to kind of get you guys acclimated with what's going on now. And then I got a couple bits of news to talk about. Then I'll head out to practice, and I'll probably do a post-practice report, but we'll be talking to the coach afterwards, and maybe some players, and so I'll cover that as well. But today is the last day of practice at the VMAC this week. Tomorrow, the team will go off to Green Bay. They will do joint practices. I am not traveling to Green Bay. I made the financial and life management decision to not add another trip to my schedule. So I will not be going to Green Bay. And but I think Brady Henderson, Mike Dugar, Bob Condota, I think some of those guys will be there. And so we'll get to hear from them, their coverage, which is great. And so I won't have any post-practice reports or anything like that the rest of the week. And then when they get back next week, I think Tuesday of next week is roster cutdown day. And that's going to be a wild day. And we're going to get all the cuts in one day. We'll certainly react to those cuts as they come out. The following day, next Wednesday, a week from tomorrow, we will do our season prediction show on Real Hawk Talk. So we'll have the whole crew doing that. I am also in the process of trying to figure out if I can do, I have an idea that I want to try for not necessarily a full day season preview, but an extended show, like probably 4 to 6 hours, I would guess, where we will go through the entire season, the entire roster. We'll go through some other numbers. We'll catch up with some other people. I'll try to bring in some guests from all across the land and just hang out together talking about the Seahawks before the season gets going. So I think that will likely happen next week is my best guess, because the following week we get into the actual season prep. We'll get into previewing the game against the Niners and doing all that stuff. I'm in the process now of looking at who I think will be my guests for the season. I'm pretty sure that Mike Sando, Dave Bowling will be back, working on that out with them. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to bring Robert Mays back this year. His schedule, they've gone to, I think, a 5-day-a-week recording plan. So he's not really able to accommodate, unfortunately, but hopefully we'll get him on occasionally as a guest. I'm having some conversations with some other pretty cool potential guests. I'll let you guys know as that comes. And also figuring out some additional sponsors to make all those guests possible. So if you know, I'm still personally trying, I really think Alaska Airlines is a sponsor I should be working with. Fly them all the time and traveling all season with them. So would love to find somebody. If you have a contact there, let me know. But we'll figure that out. The other thing that I wanted to kind of talk through with you guys, just a little bit of news, right? So Matt Stafford practiced yesterday for the Los Angeles Rams. I think that's really good news for the Rams that he's able to get on the field. I think it's interesting news that Sean McVay did not project that he was going to be at practice on Monday this time. Neither did any of the other Rams personnel. That to me says they weren't sure he was going to practice, but he was there and participated. And Sean McVay's comments after practice said it was day to day, week to week. And when asked about week one, he said that's putting the cart way before the horse. So there's still a lot of precaution being taken. And I think there's still concern among the Rams about what's going on with Matt Stafford's back. And as I think it's pretty obvious, you just don't really know what's going to happen. If it's a serious situation, you don't know what's going to happen until he takes some hits, until he actually stacks up days of, the wear and tear of throwing the football and the torque that takes on your back and moving around. I mean, even just dropping back and all those kinds of things. From what I saw, the other quarterbacks were under center. Matt Stafford was only operating out of shotgun. Why? Well, because one, you're not bending over to take the ball out of the center, and two, you're not taking those extra steps backwards, which adds a little bit more wear and tear. So we'll see. We'll see if this is anything more than just a slow ramp up. But that was an important bit of news for sure. The other thing I think that it came out today that's of interest just because they are on the Seahawks schedule is that the Indianapolis Colts have named Daniel Jones as their starting quarterback. Anthony Richardson, the 4th pick overall from a couple years ago, is the backup. So I don't think that the Seahawks will play the Colts this season. Who knows whether Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson will be the quarterback for that game. But that's a huge statement about a very young player that you took in the top 5. And there's different rumors about what would have happened. My understanding is I don't think the Seahawks were going to take Anthony Richardson, even if he was available at the 5th pick. I'm very glad that was not the case anyway. The Colts already took him, so we didn't have to have that question. I was always, and you can go back and watch the video, I was always very low on Anthony Richardson. I think he's an amazing athlete. I thought he had real challenges on any kind of throw that was not down the field. I think his ability to have any kind of touch or I didn't love the way he processed when he was passing either, going through his progressions. I just was never big on him, and I'm very happy that the Seahawks did not spend a very high pick on him because they would have been tied to that guy. Now, I think Jalen Milroe is an equal, not necessarily an equal athlete, because Anthony Richardson is a really, really rare athlete at his size. He's more of like the Cam Newton style in terms of how big he is with how explosive and all the other things. But Jalen Milroe is in the same conversation in terms of athletic ability. And I believe, based on what I've seen already, looks like he is more ready to develop as an NFL passer than I think Anthony Richardson ever has. I also don't think you'd ever see Jalen Milroe tap out of a game because he was tired, as Anthony Richardson did last year. So I think there's just all sorts of question marks with Anthony Richardson. I will say, on the negative side, Daniel Jones, you can laugh at it, but he beat the Seahawks last year in Seattle with a very bad Giants team. So I don't think that lets the Seahawks off the hook necessarily, but it is news that matters for this team. There is another super chat. Let me get to that. This is coming from Seth Kialoa. Hopefully I said that correctly. Any update on how Uchenna Nwosu has been looking? Well, Uchenna Nwosu isn't practicing yet. He is just doing conditioning work on the side. We'll see today if he's doing any more than that. But, I think it's going to take him a little while to get into shape to be able to be out there with guys that have been banging around for the last 2 months. Nwosu's coming off a surgery. They're going to get him back to a position where he can actually handle practices. It'll go from the conditioning drills to he'll go through warm-ups to he'll then do individual drills, and then eventually he'll do team drills. And then from there, who knows? But there's 3 weeks still until the first game of the season. Based on what we've heard from Mike McDonald, I don't think it's the most likely outcome that he is available and active week 1. But I do think starting week 2 and beyond, that becomes more of a realistic possibility. And it's not out of the question that he becomes available for week 1. So we will find out on that front. All right. I have time probably for a couple of questions. Let me see if there's any others here. Here's one that I just saw. Would you trade Jalen Milroe for Anthony Richardson straight up? No, actually, I would not. One of the things that I think people misunderstand about Jalen Milroe is he is not only a excellent athlete, but he's been raised to be a hard worker, has a great work ethic, was a Heisman winner from the education Heisman kind of. I think he had a 3.54 GPA, excellent student, is here every day at 4:30 in the morning. I think for all the things the intangibles that you can't see, to me, are night and day compared to what we've seen or heard about from Anthony Richardson. And I think the problems that Anthony Richardson has are not necessarily as addressable as the problems that Jalen Milroe has had. And we've already started to see Jalen Milroe make progress in that regard. And, he has not blown up preseason. I think he's played fine. He hasn't been like a Russell Wilson-esque preseason. But this third game, I think he's going to get the bulk of the snaps, and it'll be very interesting to see how he does with, a lot more. Like this last game, 3 or 4 of the series he played, the team was running out the clock. He was just handing the ball off to running backs, to get the clock down. So I would like to see him start a game personally. I'd like to see him maybe with the second string offensive line as opposed to the third string offensive line. And maybe the second string receivers, and see how he looks with that crew. That would be fun. I don't know if that's how it's going to play out, but that's certainly what I would be interested in seeing. We got a question from Old School Seahawks. Says, what's the biggest difference for you covering last year versus this year? So there's a question about my experience. Honestly, the team giving me the ability to have a sit down with players as opposed to stand-ups in the indoor practice facility, that's been huge, because I think you guys can tell from the conversations I've been having with people this training camp, we're just able to, it's a more relaxed environment when you're sitting down. You're not kind of on this timer. I think a lot of my interviews have probably been more 10 minutes versus 5 minutes. And that's partly the reason is it's just easier to kind of hang out and talk. So that's been big. Otherwise, I mean, everything was new for me last year in terms of knowing what, he couldn't do, who was here. I wasn't sure how many of the people that were already working here were going to be welcoming or not excited about my presence. And, it's a really good crew here in the media. The beat guys and gals are all great. So it's just, I think I kind of know a little bit more about what to expect. And I also know what to pay attention to, what not to. And also, I think I've built more relationships with the coaching staff, with the PR team, with some of the folks in the front office, and with the reporters. So I'm able to kind of cut through some things and know that I can actually opt out. Sometimes, like, there's a press conference where I'm like, okay, this guy's talking. I've already talked to him, or I kind of know the types of things he's going to say. I'm going to choose to do this instead of that. So it's just let me kind of pick my battles a little bit more, because I still am a one-man crew. I've got camera on a tripod here, and I got to break this down after I'm done and set it all back up. And so I do have to I can't be in everywhere at once. So I have to kind of make my own choices in that regard. Yeah, let me see if there's other questions. Here's from Hawk Scoots. Would you prefer Cooper Kupp and JSN in 12 personnel or JSN and Horton? I mean, honestly, I think the more dangerous pairing there is JSN and Torrey Horton. That said, I have a feeling that Cooper Kupp is going to show up a little bit differently in a regular season game than he will in these practices and preseason. And I think he also knows where to exert the most of his energy. So, I have not yet seen enough from Cooper Kupp to where I'm like, okay, he's going to be this major difference maker for the Seahawks on the field. He might be, but I have not seen enough to necessarily believe that's the case. So time will tell. I think Torrey Horton is going to be a difference maker, and I think he also brings different skill sets to that receiver room than Cooper Kupp does and JSN does. So that's why I kind of lean in that direction. All right, I'll take one more question. We've got, let me scroll through. Let's see. I should have a segment called Hawk Bloggers Interrogation Room. Well, yeah, this is not my favorite room. I have a backdrop, but they won't let me do it because I'm not a partner. I think only Seattle Sports is able to do backdrops. So you guys get to just see the white wall. All right. Okay. What about Romeo Doubs and get rid of MVS? Well, I just don't know if they're going to make a trade for a receiver in that way. There's some question about whether the Packers will cut Romeo Doubs. And if that's the case, then yeah, that kind of swap could make some sense. Obviously, MVS has history with the Packers. It would have to mean that the Packers are interested in bringing him on. I don't know that that's the case either. I don't think it's a terrible idea. I think Romeo Doubs definitely brings some different things than MVS does and is maybe a more interesting upside guy for them. But if he's been a malcontent to some extent in Green Bay, I also don't know if you want to be bringing that into Seattle. So, yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question, but not as sure that that's where they're going to go. All right. Let me wrap there. Appreciate you guys. Make sure you are heading over to hbtix.com, hbtix.com. We've got a bunch of tickets for the 49ers game available there. Go there, get tickets, sell your tickets to Seahawks fans, buy tickets from Seahawks fans. Make sure you follow the instructions, the recommendations that I've given there to avoid anyone doing scammy, crappy stuff. Make sure you only sell to Seahawks fans. Like, take the steps to make sure. If someone tells you that they are a Seahawks fan and they have a Twitter account or they have an Instagram account, and you see that account has a bunch of Seahawks stuff, that's great. Have them DM you from that account. Make sure that they're not lying. I'm serious about this. Like, when I give away tickets, assuming we hit one of our goals, either 25,000 subscribers on YouTube or 10,000 followers on Instagram, I'm not going to give those tickets away until, one, the day before the game, because I don't want anyone reselling them. And two, I'm going to make damn sure they're going to Seahawks fans. And I'm not talking about one Seahawk fan who's then bringing a 49er fan buddy with him, or his son or daughter who's a 49er fan. You are welcome to have 49er friends. I don't recommend it. I have them myself, but I don't recommend it. But when you're using HB Ticks, the whole reason I'm spending money every month and building this thing out myself is because I want only Seahawks fans in those seats. There's plenty of other places where people can get tickets that are of any affiliation. HB Ticks is for Seahawks fans to sell to other Seahawks fans. It only works if you take the extra steps to make sure that you're not getting scammed and that the people that are taking those tickets are Seahawks fans. So make sure you do all of those things. All right, folks, that'll do it. I will be back most likely with a post-practice report. Until then, that'll do it for this morning. I'm Brian Nemhauser. This has been another episode of Hawk Blog Mornings. Take care.